Rabotai, we shall continue learning the Chatzar Yosef. This is the Amazon version I was talking about in the Zayrov Shimshon video, Parashat Pinchas, if you want to see. It's a nice version, but again, it's paperback. This is the version, of course, the nicer one that I recommend getting. I'm just going to reiterate one more time for those who are interested. Yeah, for those who are interested to purchase this version, just email me at my name at Gmail. That's YOSEFZAYROV@gmail.com. Email me. I'll let you know the cost if you're interested in buying it. Of course, shipping is going to be on you if you're far away from me, you know. And then we can ship it out, definitely, no problem. If you want to donate to a shul, I can ship out a bulk, as many as you want. B'ezrat Hashem. We are learning right now chapter 7. Chapter 7 is talking about the story of Nero, the Roman general. We're on page, where did we leave off, Danny? You remember?
All the different directions.
I think we're on page 69. Yeah, we just finished the Ben Yehoyada. We're up to the Ben Ayahu. Yeah, up to the Ben Ayahu. So again, I'm going to quickly read the story in English just as a recap. This is part 2. Part 1 was last week. Part 2, we're still looking at the commentaries, what they have to say about this piece of the Gemara. The setting is that the Romans have declared war against Yerushalayim for the events that happened in the previous chapter 6, Kamsa by Kamsa. And Nero it was started to march towards Yerushalayim, and he did something on the way there. This is what he did. I'm just going to read the story again in English on page 67. When the Caesar heard about the Jews' rejected sacrifice from Kamsa and Kamsa, he sent Nero, Caesar, which just means he's the army general, Nero, against them with his army. As he was coming, Nero, he sent an arrow to the east. It came and fell in Jerusalem. He sent an arrow to the west. It came and fell in Jerusalem. He sent an arrow to the 4 directions of the sky, and each one came and fell in Jerusalem. He said to a child then, presumably a Jewish child, recite for me your verse, the pasuk that you learned, the most freshest one on your lips, recite it to me. The child said to him, he recited the verse in Yechezkel, the prophet Ezekiel 25:14. It says, and God is speaking in this verse, and I will give my revenge upon Edom in the hand of my nation Israel. That was a sign to Nero that God is going to get revenge against Edom. Edom is Rome, for doing what they're doing now. Upon all this information, Nero said, the Holy One, blessed be He used the term, Kucha Barichu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, wants to destroy his house. And he wants lekapurei yadeh, which means to atone his hands with that man. In other words, with me. They talk about themselves in third person. So he wants to clean up the matter with me, pretty much. What did he do, Nero? He ran away and he went and converted. And out of him eventually came Rabbi Meir, one of the biggest chachamim ever. That is the Gemara. So we started analyzing last week. We asked our questions last week, and we got up to the Ben Ayahu, page 69. Says the Ben Ayahu regarding the story. The idea of conducting this test of the arrows, right? This is the whole thing we're trying to figure out. What is this whole thing with the arrows? He sent it this way, that way, and they all magically or miraculously flew into Jerusalem. This is a type of what we call kesem. It's a divination. It's something that's forbidden for Jewish people to do. It's a sort of divine test kind of thing, related to superstition. Says Ben Ayahu, the idea of conducting this test of the arrows was placed in Nero's mind by divine supervision. So according to Ben Ayahu, which is also written by the Ben Ish Chai, commentary on the stories of the Gemara, he says that this idea was planted in his mind by Hashem. The word Gira, Gimel Yud Resh Aleph, means an arrow, and it's a hint to the name of Rabbi Meir, who eventually came from him. And so the experience of these arrows themselves contributed to the fact that Rabbi Meir emerged from him. What is the hint? The letter Gimel, so he's taking the word Gera, Gimel Yud Resh Aleph, which means arrow. He says the letter Gimel can be exchanged for the letter Yud via the alphabetical system called Achas Bata Gif, which literally just is a system. Look at note 13, it explains how this works. In this system, each letter is grouped with the 7th letter that comes after it.
Why?
This is a code, a type of code. Like it's a type of gematria. There's a lot of different types of gematria. The alphabet itself, the 22 letters, can be manipulated and formulated to reveal many deep meanings through different systems. Because 7 is a universal number that God created the world, that God based the world on. It's the lower 7 sefirot. It's what dictates the whole physical world. Elements of 7. We'll see that in a different chapter. So in this system, each letter is grouped with the 7th letter that comes after it. That's why it's Aleph, Chet, Samech. There's 7 in between each one there. Bet, Tet, Ayin. 7 in between each one there. And Gimel, Yud, Pei, 7 in between. You get the point. Letters within the same group can then be exchanged for one another. So the letters Gimel and Yud, they're 7 apart from each other. And therefore they can be exchanged. So he takes the letter Gimel, replaces it with a Yud. Okay, continues, and he says, then the letter Yud, which is the next letter in the word Gera, arrow. Again, it's Gimel, Yud, Resh, Aleph. The letter Yud, which is the second letter, it can be exchanged for the letter Mem through a different alphabetical system called Atbash. 14. In this system, the first letter of the alphabet, which is Aleph, is exchanged for the last letter, which is Taf. The second letter is exchanged for the second to last letter.
Yeah, but I don't know, this is the first time ever hearing about this.
You haven't learned the Ben Ish Chai enough. He brings this up a lot. He uses this for his drashot and connections all the time.
Can it be said that they're just they're like creating these things just for their advantages?
No, it's not random. There's a system. It's Atbash, first and last. Second and second to last. Third and third to last. Fourth and fourth to last. It's a real system. That means those letters are related. They have a certain relationship. And to reveal deeper meanings, you can flip it and exchange it and see what the deeper meaning is. Yes.
Wow. First time I hear about it.
So Baruch Hashem, you came, we learned something. So Atbash, Aleph, Taf, Bet, Shin, right? Second to last. It continues. Gimel would be third to last is Resh. Continues. Use this system. In the system, the letter Yud exchanges for a Mem. Because Yud is the 10th letter, and Mem is the 10th to last letter. Okay? Continues the Ben Yahu. The rest of the letters of the word Gira, Gimel, Yud, Resh, Aleph, arrow, besides the Gimel, are identical. So hold on a second. Here's what he did. I made a mistake. So he took the first letter of the word Gera, which is arrow, Gimel. He exchanged it for a Yud by using that first system. Achas, Bata, Gif. Right? Every seventh. Then he took that same Yud that he found by doing that, and he exchanged that for a Mem through the Atbash system.
Because he couldn't connect the Gimel to the Mem?
Yes, so he had to take 2 steps to connect the Gimel to the Mem. Took 2 steps, 2 systems.
Is that allowed?
2 systems.
Couldn't he have, let's just say, connected the Gimel to the Yud and then connected the Yud that was already there to the Mem?
The next Yud.
Yeah.
Technically, he could have done that, but then he would have to rearrange the letters, which he does anyway. So yeah, he could have done that too. So you're saying you don't like the 2 steps on one letter?
I don't mind the 2 steps on one letter. I'm just asking why he didn't do the other one. I don't mind.
That's a good question. But he could have done that, it seems. Either way,
But also, can't you get to any letter by combining steps?
you can't do any letter at all. There's a few options, but you can do anything. You can't do anything you want. There has to be a certain system connection. Right? It's not like every letter is connected. Well, in a deep way, every letter is connected to every other letter in some way. But that's a different story altogether. Okay.
There's a way you can combine using maybe 3 steps, any letters together, and change them.
I don't know. Not sure. So now that he's done those 2 steps, the Gimel has transmutated into a Mem. Right? So now he says the rest of the letters of the word Gera, arrow, besides the Gimel, which is what he used, are identical to the rest of the letters of the name Meir, besides the Mem. So in other words, he went from Gimel to Mem. Now he has Mem, Yud, Resh, Aleph. Change the order, Meir. You get, so he went from Gera, arrow, to Meir. Because this whole event of testing with the arrows connected him somehow to being able to be the ancestor of Rabbi Meir. Thus the word Gera is derived from Meir. I'm sorry, from Gera is derived from Meir.
What
Yeah.
is the significance of this?
He's just trying to show you the connection, that the details in the Gemara are not for naught. It's not for no reason. He's saying this same person whose life changed because of this arrow test that he did, which we don't know how it changed or why, but we'll see. His life, because this was a life-changing event in Nero, because this made him run away and convert. This whole thing with the arrows. And from him eventually came Meir, so he's trying to show you the connection, that there's a connection between those two things. His life-changing event, which eventually led him to merit, to be good enough, to earn being the ancestor of Meir.
One more question.
Yes.
Let's just say Meir was his grandson, right?
Okay.
We don't know. It could have been his great-grandson
Right.
or something. The fact that he merited to have a grandson that way, doesn't that mean that his son, Meir's father, also had to merit something?
Sure, absolutely. Sure. It's like a team. Okay, furthermore, the connection of the verse Yechezkel 25:14, which is the verse that the child said, is as follows. The gematria of the words Biyad Ami Israel, by the hands of my nation Israel. These are the words that are in that verse, the end of that verse. The gematria of those three words, including the kolel, is 680. What's a kolel, Mike?
Place where people learn.
Yes, that's true. But when we're talking about gematria, look at note number 15. You want to read it for us?
This is a method of gematria where the number of words in the phrase, in this case 3, is added to the total value of the letters in the phrase kolel, which means including. See chapter 15, section 2 below for an explanation for this concept.
So kolel means to include, which means it simply means when you're counting the gematria of a phrase, you count the number of words too. You add that. So you take the gematria of all the letters, and if there's 3 words, you add 3. That's what he does over here. You can also do it with 1 word. There's 1 word, you add 1. So when you do that, you get 680 for these 3 words, Biyad Ami Yisrael. And this is the same gematria, says the Benayahu, as Rabbi Meir Ba'alanes, which means Rabbi Meir, master of the miracle. That's his nickname.
Kolel?
Huh?
Using kolel?
For the second phrase, no. He's called master of the miracle because of the story of in Masechet Avodah Zarah about how he saved his sister-in-law from prostitution. I told you about that, right? That is in note 16 if you want to do some more for the riches over there. Side story. But that's his name, that's his nickname, Rabbi Meir Ba'alanes, and that's the same gematria 680 as those last 3 words in the verse that was quoted to him by the child. To Nero, by the child. Good. That was the Benayahu. Now we're going to learn the Anaf Yosef. In the Anaf Yosef, here's a commentary on the Midrashim. He touches on a couple of points that we really digress on in the notes number 19 and 20. These are by far the biggest 2 back-to-back notes in the whole book. And footnotes. And it's an interesting, it's really a whole topic and a whole shiur by itself. I think it's important just to read it quickly and understand it because it's pretty interesting. Let's see what Anaf Yosef says. He says, Nero knew that the Jews were sinful and deserving of punishment, but he was concerned that God's mercy might produce a miracle that would save them anyway.
Why was that a concern?
Because they're God's people and they have a record, they have a history of God doing miracles for them.
Doesn't that always happen?
Doesn't what always happen? In the long run, sure, but in this situation, in the short term, it was complete annihilation, complete destruction.
It's not a complete annihilation.
I mean, almost. Right, you're right. Not complete, but it was devastating. It's devastating.
Okay. Short term, saved in the short term.
Yeah.
Situation.
Right. So, what did he do? He shot an arrow directly at Jerusalem to see if a miracle would occur that would prevent the arrow from landing along its trajectory in Jerusalem.
So the opposite of what we said before.
Exactly.
Now saying he's within range, perfect range.
Thank you. Very good. Danny's on point, man. Danny, you're impressing me, but he's just paying attention.
He edited the book.
This is a year ago. So the point is this. Last week we spoke about other commentaries that were trying to explain the arrows, how they were all miraculous. Maharsha, Maharamshif, Ben Yehoiada had their own explanations of how each, because the point is this, if he's coming towards Jerusalem, fine, the ones that he shot to the side and behind, if they flipped in the air and went to Jerusalem, that's miraculous. But the one that's straight ahead, because he's going in that direction, he shot one that way, right? How is that miraculous? Miraculous. Maharsha said, and Maharamshif said, oh, you know why it's miraculous? Because he was so far away that it would never have landed in Jerusalem. But the fact that it landed anyway, the wind took it there, that was the miracle. That was the sign to him that God wants to destroy Jerusalem. The Ben Yehoiada said, no, he wasn't coming straight ahead. He was coming at a diagonal. And then he shot perpendicularly, this way, that way, and that way. Each one was, all the shots were not a direct line to Jerusalem, and they all turned and went to Jerusalem. That's how each one was miraculous. But here the Anaf Yosef is saying something else. He's saying that the line drive shot, the straight shot, was not a miraculous shot. He shot it there to see if God would do something to prevent that one from falling. If it would stop it in its tracks or make it turn around or something like that. Look at note 18. Thus,
Where did the Anaf Yosef get this interpretation?
This is his own opinion. His own opinion of how to explain Gemara. Thus, the Anaf Yosef interprets that the first eastward arrow that he shot was in direct line toward Yerushalayim, and it was within range to naturally land there. And he was testing to see if God would stop it. This is unlike Maharal, Maharamshif, and Ben Yehoiada's opinions, like we just mentioned. Okay. So now we're on page 70. Once he saw that it landed in Jerusalem anyway, naturally as expected, he understood that God would not make a miracle to save the Jews. That was a sign that God said, okay, I accept. That's how he took it. Then he shot the arrows in all the other directions, says the Anaf Yosef, to check if God's will was not only to refrain from saving the Jews, but even more extreme and more direct, to actually have the temple destroyed. Sure enough, the rest of the arrows that he shot miraculously landed in Yerushalayim, because they had to turn to land in Yerushalayim, those other ones, confirming his suspicions. So that's how the Anaf Yosef explains this Gemara. Fine. Next paragraph. The reason why he asked the child to recite his verse, even after he confirmed his suspicions via the arrows, that was one of our questions. If he already got a clear sign from God, everything's going to Yerushalayim, all the arrows, okay, go destroy. He still asked the child for his verse. That was like a prophetic thing. That was a prophetic insight he used to do. Why did he do that? Because he wanted to find out if he would receive any reward for destroying the temple. He said, fine, I'll do God's will. God has made it clear to me, says Nero, in the world of the Anaf Yosef. God has made it clear to me that he wants to destroy the temple and his city. Now, since I'm fulfilling God's will, am I going to get a reward for that? That was why he asked the child.
So could we have said that his first thing that he did when he shot the arrows,
Yeah.
he could have, the way he understood what the arrows did, whatever that is, he could have been wrong, so that's why he went to the kid to ask him for his prophetic.
As a confirmation?
Not as a confirmation, but
how else could you have interpreted that? The arrows are flying miraculously to Yerushalayim. Arrows are a sign of destruction, of killing, it's a sharp killing object. It's a weapon. How else could you interpret that?
Dangerous arrows in the road.
No, what do you mean? An arrow's an arrow. It's not. It's like a killing. It's a bow and arrow.
He landed there, maybe he should go there, but doesn't mean he's going to win. Maybe he's supposed to fight, doesn't mean he's going to win. Why does the arrow landing there mean you're going to win?
Well, that's what he did. Remember? According to Anaf Yosef, the first one that he shot was not miraculous. He was testing to see if God would stop it. Since God accepted it, he thought, okay, that means I'm going to win.
No, that means attack, but now only...
Right. He breaks up the arrows in two steps. The first one was not miraculous, and the second one was the miraculous ones. Even more confirming.
The first one was defensive, so there's no defense, because God's not going to protect them.
Sure. And the second one was,
offensive.
okay, fine, you can interpret it that way. But once you have the defense and the offense, you usually win the game. Right? So then, that's why he posed this question. So why is he asking the kid for his verse? Now he answers because he wants to know if he's going to get a reward. Why? Because technically he's going to be fulfilling God's will. And anytime you fulfill God's will, you should get rewarded, right? That's what he wanted to know.
Destroying the temple.
But that's what God wanted.
So?
What do you mean so?
Doesn't matter.
It also doesn't mean that he's going to succeed. Once again, just because the arrows went there, it just mean that he should go in that direction.
So you're saying God is like playing a trick on him, come and will kill you?
No, not playing a trick, but that's where you're supposed to be. Like if, let's say, someone was making that I'm going to throw a rock. Whatever way it's going to go, that's where I'm supposed to go. Doesn't mean you're going to be successful.
Listen, you can interpret it however. This is how the Anaf Yosef says how Nero interpreted it.
My question becomes: is Paro was also fulfilling God's
Oh,
will?
hold on a second, my friend. You're touching on a point. Note 19. Hold your horses.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's what no 19. Oh, yeah.
Hold your chariots, my friend.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah, you just looked at the note and you asked the question. Okay, fine. So now, the child replied that Hashem will give his vengeance in the hands of Israel. That was the verse from Yechezkel that he told him. Meaning that even though it was God's will that the temple be destroyed at that time, still, Nero's status as a wicked person, up to that point in his life, idol worshiper, etc., which he already acquired up to that point in his life, like I just said, was deserving of receiving retribution and revenge. Right? So that was the verse the child taught him. The child said that God is going to have his revenge against Edom, against Rome. Don't think you're going to get a reward. The contrary. So God's using you as a pawn right now to fulfill his historical will of destroying the temple, but that doesn't mean you, for being a rasha up to this point, won't get punished.
And which reward are we talking about? This world or the next world? What was Nero's mindset? Do you know?
Maybe both. So the child's verse revealed that God would exact that retribution through Israel, just as God conducted Paro's retribution in Egypt through Israel's exodus from Egypt. So now let's look at.
This is one of the most important notes.
It's a very fundamental Jewish philosophy note here, and it's a fundamental argument between two huge chachamim in history that we have, the Ravad and the Rambam. So the Anaf Yosef just now, what he said just now accords with the opinion of the Ravad, which is against the Rambam, as we'll see in note 19. This is the approach of the Ravad, the Anaf Yosef is going with, against that of the Rambam, regarding the classic question that the Rambam poses in Ilchot Teshuvah, chapter 6, Halacha 5, regarding an important facet of free will. Fundamental question. The Rambam asks, how could God punish the Egyptians for enslaving the descendants of Abraham, which means, the Hebrews, the Israelites, if God himself told Abraham that his descendants would be enslaved by a foreign nation?
We discussed this at length.
Didn't the Egyptians simply fulfill the will of God? That's what God wanted. That's what God said was going to happen to Abraham. And that's what God said to Abraham, that your descendants need, they deserve. If anything, they should have been rewarded. This is a classic question in Jewish thought, dealing with the fundamental paradox of human free will despite divine foreknowledge.
But I see a difference though,
What?
within Egypt and then what's going on with this guy. Nero.
What's the difference?
So in Egypt, they weren't asking God for signs if this is what they should be doing.
Okay.
Nero asked God for a sign. I'm going to shoot an arrow if you.
Okay, but at the end of the day, they both did what God said should be done.
But Nero only
They both did what God said should be done.
Nero only did it because he thought that God wants him to do it.
Why do you assume that?
Because we just said he
didn't only do, he just checked. He was sent as a Roman soldier, as a Roman army general. His king ordered him to do it.
He would have not done it if God would have showed him that I'm going to defend it.
If he was gonna fail, he would have not done it. The question is, did he still want it? You know what I'm saying?
Bottom line is, when a king or your father even or somebody tells you to do a mission or task and you do it, isn't that deserving of some reward? You obeyed. That's a huge deal.
Okay, yeah.
You had the free will not to, and you did it. So that's the question.
I agree.
Good. So in short summary, we're going to give you a short summary of this machloket. The Rambam answers as follows. He says, Hashem's decree, which he revealed to Abraham, that his descendants would be enslaved, was only that a certain nation as a whole would do the evil of enslaving the descendants of Abraham. Right? Because God said a nation will do this to your people. But from an individual perspective, every Egyptian in Egypt had the free will to refuse to perform the evil of enslaving the descendants of Abraham.
I feel like it's a weak argument.
That's what the Ravad says. So the Ravad there aggressively disagrees, vehemently, as you would say, purporting, meaning the Ravad is suggesting that if you accept this argument of the Rambam that, God said a nation, not individuals, then those Egyptians who actually did the evil of enslaving could claim in the court of heaven to God, but God, you decreed that we should do this evil, right? In the court of heaven, they're going to come, the Egyptians will say, God, you wanted these people to be enslaved, we enslaved them. What do you want?
And to what extent?
So, to which God will reply to them, I did not decree it on you individually, rather on the whole nation of Egypt. Right? That's what the Rambam said. Hold on. To this, they would answer back, well, if you did not decree it upon us, then whom did you decree it on? Who did it? At the end of the day, we did it. That means you decreed it on us.
But that wouldn't be my question. How would the nation...
Do you see the Rava's point?
Yeah.
It's a genius point.
But how would one nation do it without individuals doing
That's what they're
it?
saying.
That's basically what he's saying. It's the same salad.
No.
It's the same salad, same sandwich.
No, they're saying is, what the question was, I didn't say the Egyptians would do it. He said it could have been another nation.
No, that's later. You didn't say that.
No, that's not the point he's making. He's not the point
No,
making.
the Ravad's point was that a nation will do it.
Forget names.
The Rambam's point was that a nation will do it. And what that means is that it's the fault of the nation as a whole, a group, and not individual people. The Rabbah says, hold on a second. But at the end of the day, any group is built by individuals.
Exactly.
Individuals run the group, and those individuals who did it are going to come to God in heaven and say, God, we did what you wanted us to do.
Yeah.
And he's going to say, no, it was a general decree. It wasn't on you, on individual people. But then they're going to say, hold on. If it wasn't on us, right? You're saying it wasn't on us. It was general. So who was it on?
Yeah.
We ended up doing it. So that means you did it on us.
Yeah.
There's no other way around. I mean, God, you knew who it would be. You knew, you have foreknowledge of the future. You decreed it. We did it. No one else did it. That means it must have been on us, the decree. This is a deep debate. You can go back and forth. So, good. So they're going to reply, well, if you did not decree it upon us, then upon whom did you decree it? Was it on the other Egyptians who did not enslave them? Surely not, right? God's decree obviously applied ipso facto to the ones who later did it. Instead, the Ravad argues a different approach. He says this was not a decree at all. Rather, it was just God revealing to Abraham information about the future. That's how Ravad says.
But
Ravad says
decree.
No, when Ravad says, I'm sorry, when the Ravad interprets that when God told Abraham that your descendants will be slaves to a foreign nation, it wasn't, I'm making a decree that it should happen later. It's God looking at his crystal ball and saying, this is going to happen to your kids. That's all. Based on a free will, which means the Egyptians are fully liable.
When
If it
God
doesn't
told
happen, then you can say God's a liar.
But of course it's going to happen.
Exactly, so it's a decree.
when God told
So
Moshe,
that touches on the paradox of free will and divine foreknowledge.
when God told Moshe, you're not going to ever get into the land of Israel, that's a decree. That's not just
No,
foretelling the
that was a
future.
decree, sure.
This is the same
No,
thing.
but that's much clearer over there. God explains to Moshe why it happened, what you did, what you were liable for. That's different. It's different. Moshe made a mistake. He made a mistake by the rock.
It's more specific now, but still.
He made a mistake.
Still, it's whatever God says is going to happen. It's a decree.
So again, it touches
It
on...
cannot- okay, but it
The
cannot
reason
not
why
happen.
this debate is so hard
Because
is,
it cannot not happen.
is because of the paradox of free will and divine
No, I
foreknowledge.
feel like this is different.
Which is, we're not going to go anywhere with this.
Look, one point. If God says something like this, right? Abraham's people are going to be enslaved, right? It cannot not happen, like he said, because then God is a liar. It doesn't work like that.
I hear you.
So it has to be a decree. It can't just be, I told something in the future. It's a decree. A prophecy is not a decree. A prophecy, right? That's true. If someone has a prophecy, that's not a decree. Right?
Right, it depends. If it's a negative or a positive prophecy.
No, a
Depends.
prophecy is never a
Depends.
decree.
Negative prophecies are conditional. Positive prophecies must happen at some point or somehow.
So, but this was technically
It's different. It wasn't a prophet. It's God speaking. It's not a prophecy.
It's not a prophecy, bro. This is a decree.
It's
He's saying one of the.
It's a decree. I
The
think-
point is this. Okay, so according to you, anytime God speaks
of
about the future, it's a decree.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's the position the Rambam might take. That's fine. You can defend his position. I'm just letting you know that Anaf Yosef is taking the position of the Ravad. Okay, so now look.
How can it not? I don't understand. How can it not be a decree?
Okay, according to Ravad, it was just God revealing the future. What's going to
It
happen?
doesn't.
They didn't explain it.
It's
It had happened, just they didn't say by who.
So look, not that it was God's will for it to happen, but that it surely would happen on its own. That a certain nation, who ended up being Egypt, would enslave the descendants of Abraham in an evil manner out of their own free will. And since it's out of their own free will, for that they are surely liable. And that's why they're liable for being punished as they were, and they can't claim to God, we did what you wanted to do. No, that's the Rabbad's approach. See Rabbad there for second reason. Okay, that's one reason. There's a second reason the Rabbad brings down. See also Rabbi Akiva Tat's book, Will of Human Destiny, chapter 9. So basically, it's complicated. I just gave you one facet of this argument. The Rambam basically says also, the point that you guys said that God never told them the Egyptians. He told them a nation, and that nation had to deserve being it. So it was a nation who was already evil. It was a nation that was. That might be the next paragraph, actually. No. So it was a nation that was already evil, and because they were already so evil, they were the perfect candidates to be the ones to enslave them. So they became evil based on their own free will.
Right.
So for that, they're liable for punishment.
They were supposed to enslave the Jews, but they weren't supposed to torture.
Right. They were much more cruel. They were much more cruel than God intended for them to be. And that's free will, right? So there's different ways to explain this argument.
Where did you spoke about that in books?
Somewhere probably.
No, in general, we had a discussion when it came to Gemara Sotah. We talked about the same exact thing.
So now, the next paragraph in chapter 19. The Anaf Yosef applies this approach of the Ravad, right? What's the Ravad say? He says that God didn't make a decree, he just revealed the future, what's going to happen to Abraham. So he takes this approach of the Ravad and he applies it to our Gemara the following way. Nero's question regarding this matter was answered by the child's verse. The answer was that Nero was still deserving of punishment and retribution because he had already established himself as a rasha, a wicked person, out of his own free will up to that point in his life, and was therefore deserving of retribution, even though he technically would be carrying out God's will by destroying the temple. And that's why the verse that he told him was that he's going to get revenge anyway against you.
Yeah, because even if let's just say he was a rasha his whole life and he did one good thing, he obeyed one of God's things.
Yeah, commandments, will.
It's not really commandments.
His will, sure.
Doesn't mean he should be rewarded.
No, I think that any good deed at the end of the day should be rewarded to a certain degree.
No, it's not a good deed. It's just
No,
fulfilling God's will.
It's still doing God's will.
Well, fulfilling God's will is a good deed, isn't it?
Killing someone is not a good deed, but if it's a Malik, you know what I mean?
okay, but he would. When what's his name? Nero is talking about being rewarded, he's asking specifically for this mission,
Perhaps.
or his whole life.
For this thing, probably.
No,
for this thing.
For this thing, it's clear.
For this thing. But it was just outweighed, I guess.
Yeah, because over here,
Was
what
that weight?
Ravad is saying is that he might be right. He's saying he might be rewarded for this thing, but his whole life he's a rasha, so he's still going to get punished.
Retribution. Perhaps. But that's how the Anaf Yosef would say it, yeah.
The sins and the deeds, whatever, are two separate categories. So you're going to be punished for being a rasha, but at the end of the day, he did.
But there is an accounting that's done at the end of a person's life, his sins versus his mitzvot. And it's a very, very important weighing, because there's a weight scale done.
Eye for eye, whatever. So everything is going to be just. You know, it's not going to be forgotten.
I understand, but a person's status of rasha or tzaddik or benoni, middle, is determined based on that final calculation.
Yeah.
Masechet Rosh Hashanah speaks about it. Page 16, 17, very famous Gemara there.
Even if the biggest rasha, if there's something that he did that was good, he's going to be rewarded for it.
Sure, but how? It could be in this world he could be rewarded. It could be in this world.
That's not the answer. He's not saying.
But the reward in this world is actually not to his best interest.
Yeah, but here Nero, when he asked about the reward, he didn't say is it spiritual or physical.
Okay.
He doesn't care about that.
Fine. Beseder.
No, but that's why, because we had so it's not, he didn't say, oh, am I going to have the 72 virgins or whatever, he could have believed.
He's not Arab, or he's not Muslim.
An example.
Okay, next piece, the Maharal. Short piece here, but there's a big note as well. Maharal says, it was the way of the Goyim, the Gentile nations at that time, to be menachashim. Menachashim means readers of omens, or doing this divination kind of things. In that they would throw an arrow and go to wage war in whatever direction the arrow pointed. So Maharal takes a different approach than everybody else so far. Look at note 20. Why did the Maharal choose this is just a side point. We're trying to figure out why did the Maharal choose the word nichush, which means reading omens, to describe Nero's activity rather than kesem, which means divination, as Rashi did. Rashi explained it as a kesem. The Maharal is explaining it as a nichush. They are similar, but different. They're two separate isurim in the Torah to do. Two separate things, related, but the Torah forbids both of them.
So what is reading omens?
So let's see. Indeed, the two are similar, but they are very different too, since there are distinct Torah prohibitions for each one. See Rashi's commentary to Devarim 18:10, where he brings down sifrez, which is a midrash, shorthand examples of each one. In short summary, it's like this: divining, which means kisum, is when one actively looks for direction or answers about his fortune based on some sort of mundane voluntary activity that he does, which has no intrinsic power in itself.
If I score the shot, that means...
Exactly. If I make this basketball shot, that means I should go ask the girl out for a date. You know, something like that. Not connected, meaningless, mindless. That's asur.
Wow. What does that consider?
If you're really gonna follow it. If you're doing it as a joke, it's a joke. But if you're really gonna follow it, it's asur. If that's what you're using to direct your own life, 100% asur to the Torah. Deoraita. Okay.
So look, wait.
Sefer Chinuch Mitzvah 5:10 explains more. Yes.
Quick question. Let's say I don't have a decision about something. I flip a coin. That's considered a eta?
It's related.
Because
Yeah.
I'm allowing a coin to make a decision for me.
Yeah, it's related.
But that's just, I don't know. That's a little bit.
It's related. The coin is dictating your decisions. A meaningless activity, mundane, meaningless activity. Is
It's choosing between eight.
So you ask someone else to choose for me. If you can't choose, say, listen, I can't choose for me.
So if I tell my wife, I want to go out to eat, and I'm like, where do you want to go?
You can do a lotto. We see in the Torah many places where they do lottos. Again, it's a halachic thing. It's complicated. There's a question: can you do lottos? Can you do it on Shabbat?
What is the lotto?
A lottery, like a lottery.
Bunch of numbers.
Yeah. Different halachic topics. Very interesting stuff, but not for now. So whereas that's kisum, whereas reading omens, which is nichush, that is when one attributes insignificant events that happen involuntarily, such as bread falling from his mouth or a deer blocking him on the road, to be revealing his fortune, right? So the difference is the kesem is you're doing something, and here he's doing something, he's shooting the arrows, right, Nero? Whereas nichush is when something happened by itself and you read that as a sign. It's a sign.
You're not allowed to do that either?
If it's mundane and meaningless, no, you cannot.
Like if you get stuck at a red light even though you could have went because maybe I would have got a car accident. That you can't do that?
That's different. Now we're saying you're using it to make a decision of what to do next. That's what's not allowed.
Like the bird flew over here. Oh, that means I have to go in that direction.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
Right. So he then makes life decisions based on that. That's asur. When considering the Maharal's whole approach to our Gemara, as we bring it here, the reason why the Maharal chose to categorize Nero's activity as reading omens, nichush, makes sense. Right? Because that was the original question. Why is Maharal saying nichush, which is the one where things happen by itself and you read it? Whereas Rashi explained it as kesem, which is you're doing something and you're reading it. So Maharal, his whole approach was that they used to shoot the arrows and let it fall by itself and then follow where the arrow is, what direction is. But whatever direction it ends up landing on, because you throw it up, you shoot it, and then it falls on the ground. It could fall this way, that way, right? It's an arrow, yeah, whatever it's pointing. It's an arrow. However, wind, if I shoot it up like that, it'll fall anywhere, right? So the Maharal asserts here that Nero was interested in the directions the arrow pointed after they fell naturally, which is dependent on other factors outside himself that happen involuntarily, such as the wind and the air quality.
What's the difference between shooting a basketball?
There's only one, it's only hit or miss. Here there's like 4 different possibilities. But there you're shooting the ball. If it's indoors, what else is affecting it? Nothing. If you're outside and it's really windy, maybe, but that's...
So if you're shooting it and you're saying if it rims out this, if it's an air ball this, is that no?
If I'm in the indoor gym and I'm shooting it, I'm in control of the ball. Nothing else is in control of the ball. So therefore that's kesem.
Well, what if you attain the shot?
But if you're outside on a windy day, or not even a windy, regular day, regular breeze, the higher you go, the more windy it is. And I shoot an arrow up and I'm letting nature decide for me. That's, you could say, is considered.
Different than 4 directions.
It doesn't matter where you shoot it, because the point is he's going by where it lands, how it lands, where it's pointing when it lands.
When the basketball lands, if I say it's going to land behind the free throw line, behind this, that's still my thing, right? Because it's still coming from my hand.
Yes, and there's nothing else. Exactly, there's nothing else affecting where the ball goes. Just me.
How
It depends how you set it up. It depends on what condition you're making. So if you're just going by a shot, yes or no, if it goes in, I'm doing this. If it doesn't, I'm not. That's, I would say, it's kesem, because kesem is you're doing something. Nichush is where something else happens that you can't control, and you follow that. So here, the arrow, the wind is controlling it, and he follows that. That's why he calls. That's why maybe that Maharal calls it nichush.
What if doing this you're relating to Hashem? You know, like I'm doing this, and Hashem is telling me basically what.
You can't. Who says that God wants to communicate with you in that way? Who are you?
Well, why not?
Why yes?
Why would it be?
Before you answer why not, answer why yes.
That's a good point.
That's it.
But you can't answer why not either.
I'll tell you why not, because God says in the Torah, don't do it. Come on.
No, he says you can't give the power to the item.
No, you cannot assume that this is the power. This is not it. God's it.
No, I'm saying God is giving me through that. You get what I mean?
No, you can't do that. Can't do it. It's a sur. You can't do it. Again, there are certain things.
That was my question.
We're going to see that there's some notes here. I don't know if I brought it here. There are certain things that are allowed to do, as long as you don't express it. And the Meiri brings examples. I don't know if this chapter or the chapter. You know it's a different chapter. Yeah, it's later on in the book, where another kid is asked about his verse. Yeah, this is later on. Remember with the Rav Sheshat and when they try to feed him that bone. Over there, he also asked the kid for a verse. So over there, there's examples. Which chapter was that? Chapter, what was it called? Angel story. No,
Blind man who sees, right?
Blind man who sees. That's what it's called. Blind man who sees. It's called Blind Man Who Sees. Chapter 32, I think it is. Yes, chapter 32. Over there, there's a similar story where Rav Sheshat asked the kid about a verse. And then we bring over there in the note. Here we go. Yes. Go if you want to look into it more. Page 464, note 10. Let's really quickly. We have time. Let's really quickly. The Meiri on Sanhedrin 68b asks how Rav Sheshat could have asked the child for a verse to instruct him what to do, since this is a form of kesem, isn't it? Which is prohibited by the Torah, as the Rambam rules in Chol Avodah Zarah. The Meiri answers, right? Of course. The Meiri answers that such divination is only prohibited when the act is commonly known to be one of divination, such as hand or card reading, those kind of things, right? There's a fortune telling. That's asur, right? If one follows the instruction that such divination gives him, he transgresses this prohibition of the Torah, according to Meiri. However, when someone makes for himself a sign that is not known to all, then it is fine to act based upon it. Opinion of the Meiri. For example, if one purchases a house and sees that his finances have turned for the better since he's had his house, and he keeps the house even though he wants to sell it, and he would sell it for a good deal, but he keeps it only because he is afraid that his fortunes may turn for the worse if he sells it, this is allowed.
I disagree. You know why? Because there's a lot of athletes, they have this superstition, like if I wear this sock, I'm going to have I wore this sock for 3 games. These 3 games I did amazing, so I'm going to wear this sock for the rest of the season.
The Meiri says it's allowed.
But I'm saying, how is that any better than flipping a coin?
You're attributing power to the sock.
That's a little, over there it's a little different, because over there the surah situations are difficult over there because you don't know what to do. You're indecisive and you're making a decision based on one of these things. That's asur. Here,
to wear this sock because it gave me good luck for 3 games.
Here, he's not doing anything active. He's not doing something to figure out what to do. He's just not doing something and keeping the status quo. It's very fine line. Do you see? He already has the house. He already has the house. In other words, listen. In other words, he has this thing where this house gives him good mazal. He's getting a good flow from Shemayim since he's had this house. So not selling the house is a passive thing. He's not doing anything active. He's just keeping the house.
But he's not selling it because...
Do you understand? He has the house and he's not selling it.
He's reading an omen. That's reading an omen.
It's fine line. It's fine line. He's not doing anything actively. He's just keeping the house. He's not doing an action. The Isur is an action. The Isur is an action. Doesn't matter. The Isur is the action. these Yisur in the Torah, to be liable for them, is you have to do something with it. Shoot the arrows, all these things. Go do the card reading, all these things. Exactly. He's just not doing something. He's not selling the house. He can sell that and keep it.
So not going outside, or like, it just get weird.
No, listen, and no one said you're allowed to be weird. You have to be normal.
Those MLB players, they don't shave their beards in postseason because they.
So what? What's the Yisur of that? Not shaving your beard.
I'm saying they're attributing.
But they're not doing something. That's okay. Doing something is the Yisur.
Wow, that's
Okay, so
That's a
so
little
so
bit
time
heavy.
out. Not shaving is okay, but shaving for something is not okay.
If I'm connecting the shaving
Yes.
to,
I'm connecting not shaving to winning.
sure.
Okay.
But me connected
but
to
he's connecting
shaving,
shaving to
winning, it's a problem because
Wait, you're connecting shaving to winning?
that's what you say because
We're
it's an
two different
action.
people.
Because now I'm shaving because I think I'm going to win because of it.
That's something else. Winning a game is different. That's different. Again, you have to be very.
Okay, Parnasa, here.
Even that. The point is
Let's just.
making life decisions. Life
No,
decisions.
this is not a decision. This is a Parnasa, the same thing as the house, okay?
Okay.
Just instead of the house, it's shaving, okay? Not shaving, having my beard and not shaving, I think is going to give me Parnasa for whatever reason.
Okay.
It's a good mazal for me. He thinks shaving, that means having a clean face, never having hair on his face, so constantly shaving every single day, is going to bring him mazal.
Again, that's not what we're talking about. It's different. We're talking about if I do. We're talking about I'm doing an action, and based on that, I'm going to choose what to do.
Yes,
Here,
you just said it.
making parnassa is not what to do. You're hoping. It's different. It's different.
No.
You're going to choose what to do.
Take your example. Say your example of the house one more time.
Yes.
Say that example.
He has a house and he keeps it because.
Substitute the word house for shaving and not shaving.
Okay, that's fine. That's nothing. That's nothing.
Both are okay?
That's
Because-
not the Yisur. The Yisur is when I do something and based on that I make my next decision to do something next. That's the Yisur.
Okay, so I am not shaving because I think it brings
Let's go
me
downstairs.
it brings me good luck. Can we say that? It brings me good luck.
Sure, I mean there's a philosophical question on the side point if we can do that. This is not the topic. That's not Kisum and Nichush. What you just described is not Kisum and Nichush.
Is it the same as the house?
Yeah, that's what she says. That's why it says it's Mtar, because that's not that.
Okay, and him shaving because he thinks it's good luck.
Same kind. Not saying that's a good thing to do, but that's not the Yisur of Nichush or
Even
Kisum.
though it's an action, it's not.
Yes, because over there, because you're not using it to make a decision. Do you understand?
Okay.
You're just thinking it's going to bring you something.
Yeah.
Okay? That's the point. Okay. There's more over there. So now I just want to finish this note in the Maharal, and we'll finish the Maharal, and we're going to finish for today. The Maharal asserts that here that Nero was interested in direction the arrow point after it naturally fell, which is dependent on the outside factors of the wind. On the other hand, the Rashi, the Maharsha, and the Ben Yehuda agree that the arrows miraculously landed in Jerusalem. They flew there, right, according to them. As such, they interpret this activity more along the lines of divination. Kesem, since he consciously took part in the act of shooting the arrows, initiating the test, making as if he were grabbing the arrows and asking them what to do, which is the example of divination that Rashi brings in Devarim 8:10. He says, who is a diviner? Who has transgressed kisum? One who holds the staff or any object and says to it, shall I go or shall I not go? And he drops it. And wherever it goes, that's where he goes. Right? He makes a decision based on and that's what, according to the other interpretations, that's what he's doing with the arrows. If it goes to Yerushalayim, I'll go and kill and fight. But the Maharal says, no, he's just throwing it up and letting it land. So that's why he calls it Nichush. Okay, I just want to finish the Maharal. Ask me after. And where's the Maharal? The last point over here. So when Nero shot the arrows, what our Gemara means by it came and fell in Yerushalayim is that once the arrow landed on the ground, the head of the arrow pointed to the direction of Yerushalayim. Not that it actually miraculously landed in Yerushalayim proper. That's the Maharal's approach. The first arrow was thrown eastward because this was. Huh?
Doesn't the Gemara specifically say it landed?
No, it just says it came and fell in Yerushalayim. That's how he interprets it. We'll see. That's how the Maharal holds. The first arrow was thrown eastward because this was the straight line direction from him to Yerushalayim, according to Maharal. Okay, that he was coming that direction. Then the second arrow was thrown westward, the opposite direction. He did so because divinations, kesem, generally correspond to the constellations, mazalot, different groups of stars, in some format. And every direction from any given vantage point invokes a different portion or group of the mazalot. Because anywhere you look, it's different groups of stars, different pagan gods they used to believe in. The same is true for why he repeated the divination in every direction, to make sure that there was no constellations, no mazalot, no pagan gods that he believed in at all that favored Israel. So he shot them all in every direction, and according to Maharal, they all landed on the ground normally, but they all were pointing toward Jerusalem. And that was a sign that no power in the world from any pagan god was going to protect the Jews. And that's the end of the Amudei Chatzar. We're going to start the Chatzar next week with Hashem. A lot of deep insights. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.